Alright, so welcome. So today we're going to be going over how to create a slideshow in iMovie. And I'm doing iMovie first just because it's a free program on a Mac, and we'll keep this simple. And I will also be doing this same video in Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere. So if you have those and you want to know how to do basically a slideshow in those programs, I will give you the process. So the first process, whether you use any program, is sizing your images so that they are set up correctly to work. Now there's a couple different ways to do this. So we have this image here, and this is a really long panoramic type image. So if we were to import this into iMovie and run it, you're going to have black space on the top and the bottom because the ratio is different than the movie size. So if we click on crop and we go to 16:9 up here, this is going to be your image ratio. So if you want your image to fill out the frame from top to edges to bottom, and I'll just randomly crop it like this, that is going to be your image ratio. So if I was to import this, it would run exactly like this. Now, if we want this whole image to run, but we don't want to lose any part of the picture, we need to change some information. Now you can do this in iMovie. I just find it simpler, and you can do some more interesting things, as I'll show you here in a little bit with images by doing it now. So first thing we're going to do is come up here and go to image size. And so if you are in inches, you want to switch over to pixels, and you should get used to using pixels because in today's world it is very helpful. So HD format is 1920 by 1080. So 1920 on your long width and 1080 on your height. So that's your HD size, and that's what most people are going to be doing. I don't think many people are going to be doing 4K, but even if you do 4K, a lot of the times it's going to still be this same 16:9 ratio. Just so you know, when working with pixels, resolution has no impact. So don't worry, you can make this 8 million and it won't matter. So what we're going to do here is change this. All right, so obviously, if I come in here and let me go back just so I can show you, if I change this to 1080, you will notice it's made the width higher. That's because this ratio is wrong. So you can't actually change the size of this in image size if you want black or white on either side of this image. So now I'm going to go back up and go to image canvas size. And we'll switch back over to pixels, and we are at 1920, and I'm going to change this to 1080. You'll notice the background color is saying, hey, is black. If you want black, I have black set. I could switch it to white if I wanted, but I'm going to keep it as black. And now I've made this 1080, and now watch what happens. So now we have black on either side of our image, and this image ratio is 16:9. So I'm going to Command Z and go back out. So I'm going to go to image canvas size again, change this back to pixels, and I'm going to make this 1080 once again. But the first time I did it, my anchor point was in the center. I'm going to switch it so my anchor point is in the bottom, and now you can watch what happens. So now, since we've moved the photo and anchored it to the bottom, it's putting all that excess color up top. Now, this is personal preference. You can make this a color, you can make this white, you can do whatever you want with this canvas space size. You can also put a title in here. So if I wanted to come and put a title, can't type, and put that in there, there's my title. So I could add a title or text to the image. If you wanted the text below it, this image to say something about whatever your image is about, you could also anchor it to the top and put it below. But that is canvas size. So that is, we're changing the canvas size So it makes it easier when we get into iMovie to just sort of import over and get an image in. So we're going to Command Z a couple times. And I'm actually, just for the fun of it, going to crop this, actually 2x3, just make it like that. Now a lot of you are going to have vertical images. I'm going to actually flatten this image just for a second to make it easier. And now if I come up here and go back to canvas size, go back 2 pixels. So now notice everything is really screwed up because this image is way too small. So the first issue I have here is the height is wrong. It's not going full width. So if I want that to be full width, I need to go to image size and make that 1080 because our vertical height is 1080. So now we're good vertically. Now I can come back to canvas size, switch this back over to 2 pixels, and I can make this 1920. So there's our 1920 by 1080. Right now it's going to center this image, but what if I want it justified left? And I'll show you why I'm doing this. Alright, so now we have pushed the image over here and we have the canvas size. You could actually put a second image on here, or you could come in here and put type into this image if that's what you wanted to do. Now, the reason I do type and everything in Photoshop is just because the type tool is much better in Photoshop than it is in trying to do this in iMovie. So I do a lot of prep and image size in Photoshop or Lightroom before I ever get to iMovie. So that is how to size your images and get them ready for iMovie. The next step I'm going to show you is I'm going to, actually I might even just save this like this, and then we will switch over to Lightroom. Alright, so this is step number 2. So now we are over in Lightroom. And so Lightroom actually has some benefits in this process in that it lets us automate lots of photos at the same time. Some of the downfalls are, of course, we can't add type and kind of screw around with canvas size so easy. But so what we're going to do here is, so we've got our images, and I'm going to crop some of these and some of them I'm not going to crop. So I'm just going to go to this image and we'll switch on over to the develop module, and I'm going to click on the crop tool, and you can see this is already sized for 1920 by 1080. But if you need that ratio, you will notice as you come on over here that it does not exist. So it doesn't exist in your ratios. However, it does exist down here as 16 by 9 by 1920 by 1080, which is what you want. So we're going to select that. And then this would allow us to crop in this ratio. Alright, so I would hit OK. So in a case where I have an image like this, which is a native sort of a 2x3, you can see this is 1920 by 1280. Now if I come on over here, I can switch to that 16 by 9 or ratio, and I can simply crop my image, and now it is the correct ratio. Now we'll fix the size when we export. So this is not something that you have to do. So any image that you have that is not the correct ratio that you want, you can simply come in here and crop. Now I'm going to leave some of these the wrong ratio, so when we actually get into iMovie, so I can kind of show you how to fiddle around and deal with that issue as well. So we will assume at this point we have cropped all images how we want. And what I'm going to do now is size everything. Now most of these images are correctly sized, but we're going to assume that yours aren't. So I'm clicking on my very first image over here. On a Mac, I'm holding down Shift and click. Basically, I want to select all images. You could easily come down here and just hit Command A, which will select all as well. Be Control A on a PC. The next thing we're going to do is go up here to File, and you're going to Export. So we are going to put this in the same folder as the original photos, just to make it easy, but you could pick a different location. So I'm going to, let's say, change this, put folders in a sub, so they're going to go into the original folder, and then I'm going to put them in a subfolder, and I'm going to call this slideshow size. So we know they're sized and ready to go for the slideshow. If you wanted to rename them, you could, but I'm not going to rename my images. Then we're going to come down here, and you could really do this any format. So I'm just going to leave these as a high quality JPEG, and I'm going to, you have your choice of leaving the color space at Adobe or going to sRGB. The fact is, when you go to video and export it, it's going to be in basically a color space for that. So if you want to assume that some of these might go to the web as well, go ahead and switch over to sRGB, which is the web format. Next thing, we're going to go down to image resizing, and this is important, so resize to fit. And we are going to actually just use long edge, and the reason for this is not to use length and width. It's, you might have, if you do have an image that's vertical, this will make your vertical image the right size. But if you want to do width and height, you can do that as well. So we can come in here and go to pixels, so we know the width is 1920 and this is 1080. Now this is going to work for my image because all the images that are cropped exactly right, this will work. However, anything that's not that ratio, like that 2:3 image here, it's going to screw it up. So that's why I use long edge only. And I pick 1920 because that's going to be our long edge in pixels. Remember, resolution has no effect on pixel size. So output sharpening, this is really up to you. I usually use screen. You can use low if you're like on a Nikon camera. You might want to switch over to standard if you're using Canon. Their low pass filter is a much softer image coming raw out of the camera. So I'm going to just pick standard. But since these are already toned, I'm just going to pick low just so we have that. Watermark, if you wanted to put a watermark, you could, but I'm not going to use it for a video. And then I'm simply just going to hit export, and you will see up here, waloo. So we'll go to slideshow, and then notice right down here we have slideshow size. So there are all of our sized slideshow images, and we are ready to switch over and head into iMovie. Alright, so we are in iMovie here, and the first thing that we're going to do is actually set up iMovie. So if you go up into iMovie and you come down to preferences, you're going to have some things that are available. So the first thing we have is the slow motion clips, and at this point, we're in this type of video, we're not going to be using that. The next is photo placement, and I have fit or crop to fill. So we're going to leave it at fit. There's also Ken Burns effect, which I think is the basic default. Then you can set your photo duration. So however basically long you want your images to run for, we're going to leave it at 4 seconds, but if you want 5, if you want 2, if you want 3.5, you can change that there. Your default transition time is going to be 1 second. I'm going to leave it at that. And I think it by default theater comes on, but I don't want to do that. So I have that turned off. So we're going to come up here, click the X, and we're gone. So next we're going to create our new movie. So we're going to go ahead and just click once on create new, then select movie, and now we have everything ready to go. So right now it's telling us to import our media. So we're going to come over here and click once, and I've got mine selected already, but you can just basically find where you put that folder. So I'm going to select the first one, to hit Command A to select all, and then import. And there are images that we sized before in Photoshop and Lightroom. So right here is our media. Down here is our timeline. So this is, we're going to be dragging and putting these images down here in the timeline. And then as we play this, it will show what's going on up here. And so this is set up for 1920 by 1080, and we are ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do is go over titles. All right. So we are going to start off with a title over an image. So I'm going to drag an image down here into our timeline. Remember, we set that up as 4 seconds. So notice it's 4 seconds long. It looks long, but you can come over here and drag this down and control your size. Then we're going to go over to titles, and we'll just grab a basic, we'll use this lens flare title, and we'll drag this down, and we're going to put it on top of that image. So you can see over here, we're going to select this. So I selected it. You can choose your fonts here. We'll just leave Baskerville, and I will call this Slideshow. If you select your image now, you can easily change font sizes, and you can change your font. You can make it bold, italic. If you want to change your font color, you can do that there as well. So we have Slideshow, and it's set and ready to go. And if I come over down here to the timeline, I just move this to the front. Now I'm going to hit spacebar. That's going to play it. You could also come up here and just hit play, and you can see this is our title over an image. So if you want to do a title over your image, that's how you're going to do that. So I'm going to hit Command Z a couple times to get rid of all that. I'm going to come up to backgrounds, and they have some default backgrounds here, and we will just grab black just because it's easy. Once again, if you want to make this smaller, you can. Then we're going to go back to titles. We'll grab that same title and we'll drag it on top, and I'll come here and change it to Slideshow. And if I want to change the font just to show you, we'll make it a little bit different one, and I'll just drag this to the front, hit spacebar, and there's our Slideshow title opening our image. So we're going to go back to my media, and now I'm going to start dragging these clips in. So we'll have this one, we'll run this one, this one, this one, this one. Whoops. So you can see right here, I'll go back. I accidentally dropped a clip over top of another clip, so it would be taking precedence. So it looks like I want this one, we want this one, and then I selected 3 and put all 3 down. So you don't have to do it individually. If you do want to select multiple clips at one time, you can easily select multiple clips. Now you notice if I select one, it puts a yellow box around it. That's meaning that we're going to be working on that image. So let's say we have this first image and we don't want it to run for 4 seconds. You'll notice I slide this over, we get those 2 arrows, and then I can slide it back to the left. And above us up here, we're getting a little time. It's very difficult to get it exact, but we'll make that one 3 seconds. So if you want to make something longer or shorter, you're just going to come until you get that either before or after, and you can easily adjust the timing of your clip. So if we come down here and I select this image, you will notice that this image and this image don't fill up this whole frame like this one does. So this one was sized for 1920 by 1080, but these weren't. So if you don't size an image like I was showing you before, it's not going to fill up the frame. There's nothing wrong with that. If you do want it to fill up the frame, what you're going to need to do is go select the clip, go up here, and you notice we have some things that we can do. So what we're going to want to select is crop. Now these are just some toning or color balance. We're going to assume that we did that correctly in Photoshop or Lightroom. So we're just going to go ahead and click on crop. So our first one is what we selected as the default, which was fit. So it's making the vertical height fit, but not the width, because the image is a different ratio. So that's fine. If we want that, it will run just like this with some blank spaces on the side, and you're good to go. If you want to hit crop to fill, notice it's going to now crop your image so it fits and fills the window. So if I hit play, notice it's resized that image over here to crop and fill. The last one is Ken Burns. So the Ken Burns effect is sort of a moving type image. So notice it says at start here in this outline, and you can control this and you can move it basically wherever you want it to. So if I want it to start here, and then I can come in here, and then notice we have end. So you have the end part right here. So you can also flip these to make the end, the outer part, and to zoom out and or to zoom in. So if I was to just play this, you will see it slowly zooms in. And if I come back and I flip this, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to zoom out. And you can have it move across or do whatever you want. There's all kinds of different ways to make the Ken Burns effect work. So you will need to go through each of your images. So we will hit crop to fill on this one. This one is sized well, and that one's sized well. So we seem to be pretty good. We'll let some of these run that aren't sized correctly and let them go just so you can see how this works. So now we have all of our images laid out in the timeline. If you want an ender frame, go ahead. You're going to do exactly the same way as you did with the titles. You're just going to drop that in, and you should be good to go. So the last thing we have is transitions. So if I click on transitions, I'm just going to slide my timeline back over. The ones that most people use is cross dissolve, but we do have fade to black, which we can use on the end, which would make sense. So if you just drag it and you put it wherever you want, you'll notice you'll get those two little triangles facing each other. So I will do a couple different ones just because I want you to see how they work. These are not normal transitions that I would use, but I don't even know what half of them do. So if we come up here to the beginning, so watch up here as I hit play, and we can see we've got all these different transitions moving from one image to the other, or you can simply just leave it as cross dissolve. We haven't added any transitions here, so for the rest of them I'm just going to drag over cross dissolve and put those in all the images, except for this one. I'm going to add fade to black on the end. So this image is going to fade out to black. So if I come up here and we just hit play, this final image is going to show, and instead of cross dissolve, it's going to fade to black. And then you could have that sort of black credits or whatever you would want to put on the end of your slideshow. Alright, so we're going to move on over to audio, and I have this song here, Tango Bango, which I downloaded. This is free, so I'm allowed to use this on YouTube. So I'm just going to go ahead and select it. Now when you're selecting music, obviously this is a really short video, trying to get something that's going to work within your time frame. So, but this is much longer, but that's going to be okay. So I'm just going to click, hold, and drag and place this below my images. And so here is our timeline. Now notice you have these little yellow peaks that are happening. That is what's called clipping. That means the audio is too loud. So I'm just going to take it, I'm clicking on that yellow line and I'm dragging that down until notice those little yellow peaks have gone. And so it is fitting our timeline better. So normally the audio would be playing, but recording a video is not going to work. So I've actually turned the sound off on my speakers for now. So since our audio is too big, we're going to come over here, and first of all I'm going to make this smaller so I can see what I'm doing, and then I'm going to take this and just drag it over. Alright, so notice it's automatically stopping there. If I want it to stop at the end of the image, we can do that as well. So now if I was to turn my speakers back on, and so we'll be able to hear this, we have the audio playing over our timeline. And we can make this louder or softer depending on what you want. If you have another track where you're talking or something, you can simply go ahead and drag that below. Alright, so we've added our audio track to our slideshow, and the last thing we're going to do here is output this. So we're going to come up here to this top right and hit the share icon. It has multiple ways for us to output, and each one of these is optimized for whatever location it's going. We're just going to use File, so I'm going to select File. So up here you can label what you want this to be. I've labeled it Slideshow. If you want to add a description, you can do that. You can put tags here. You can save this either as a video and audio file or audio only. We are using 1080p at 60 frames per second. You can also do 4K. You don't get a whole lot of output options in iMovie. We're going to save the quality as high just for time. You can do best for pro resolution. There's also custom, but we're not going to really get into that. So we're going to go back to high. And compress, we're going to do better quality. So we're good. So you're going to hit next. So it's going to ask us where we want to save this. I'm going to say desktop. I already have one saved there, so that's why it asked me that, but normally you won't. Alright, so you can see this saved really fast. That's because I've already rendered this video. Normally up here you'll get this little icon here. Video has to render, and it takes a long time. So it took, I would say a good 5 minutes for this just this little bitty slideshow to render and then save. So be patient. You have to wait for that. It's like a little clock, and it will move around. I'll put a screenshot up here of it doing it, but it took a lot of time, so I kind of didn't want to sit here for 5 minutes while that happened. So that is how you create a slideshow. So if you want to see your slideshow, you can easily come over here. Here's that slideshow. I can double click this and hit play. And there we go as our slideshow. If I turn the audio back on, we have the audio on the file. But I have my speakers off, so we don't have to listen to that. So hopefully that was helpful. You learn how to do a slideshow in iMovie. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave those below. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you next time.